The countries that you see on your screen are the countries of Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. Ukraine being in blue, Russia being in red, and Belarus being in green. Today, I wanted to not focus on US politics for a while and talk about the recent war in Ukraine and also talking about the perspective of war from the Belarusian side, the Ukrainian side, and the Russian side. Keep in note that this is just a video of based off information and history I studied. Some points could be taken out, while others could be kind of put in. But anyway, let's begin. So the country in green, Belarus, this is the nation's flag. Now, the history of Belarus is pretty interesting and complicated at the same time. Belarus as a country of its own people, is relatively new since it's gained its independence in 1991. About, I say, 31 years ago, going on 31. But the Belarusian people, as a whole, have existed for centuries. Belarusians are often categorized as Russians. However, that's a huge mistake to make. Although the language is similar, the Belarusian language is heavily influenced by the Polish and Lithuanian culture, since the Kingdom of Lithuania back in the Middle Ages encompassed all of Belarus and would later join in a union with Poland. There's also some Polish influence in Belarus's culture. Now, other from that, from Belarus's perspective, they're pretty much siding with Russia when it comes to the Ukraine war. However, it's mostly the Belarusian government under Alexander Lukashenko. Belarus is allowing Russia to use its territory for the movement of missiles, troops, and other military equipment in combat. And while at the same time, Belarus is not involved in the Ukraine war because they're not sending active soldiers. The Belarusian point of view will be the shortest because I'm still gathering information. But just know that the Belarusian people are relatively against the war in Ukraine. Matter of fact, they're against Lukashenko in general. With the recent protests, things might be changing as Alexander Lukashenko has been president of Belarus since its independence in 1991. Many of them through fraudulent and often rigged elections. So who knows what would happen for the future of Belarus. Anyway, moving on. This country is called Ukraine, the country that was in blue. Ukraine is a country that is in Eastern Europe that is bordered with said Belarus, Poland, Slovakia, I think Hungary, Romania, Moldova, and Russia. Ukraine first got its international spotlight in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, that small little peninsula underneath Ukraine. Russia said that it was through referendum and to save the Russian people. Now, what is the cause of Ukrainian and Russian relations being so bad? Well, you have to look at the history behind Russia and Ukraine. First, you had World War I, where Ukraine was used as a battleground, and the fact how the Russian Civil War really did hurt Ukraine as a nation. Then you had the horrific Holodomor, which caused millions of Ukrainians to starve to death under the Bolshevik regime. Then you had the Soviet Union, which was a whole mess in itself, leading up all the way to now. The Ukrainian people and the Russian people, at least from the ones I've spoken to and seen, don't really hate each other. However, there's a long history of bitterness between the two. And the thing is that Ukraine wants to open itself up more to the West, more to NATO, more to the EU, and is doing what many former Soviet countries, such as Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, even more, they wanted to join the West. However, there's a huge problem with that. And it leads me to the next perspective. This leads me to the Russian perspective. Now, many people like to portray Russia, especially in the modern media and with the current war going on in Ukraine, as the bad guy. Now, I'm not giving any type of justification towards Russia. But when you look at how Russia is seeing this war, it's not justifiable, it's not understandable, but in some ways, Russia feels threatened. Now, why does it feel threatened? First, we have to also look at history. Russia has been invaded multiple times, ranging from the Mongols, Napoleon, to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, with suffering invasions from almost every century. This is the whole reason why Russia, or at the time, the Soviet Union, had what was known as the Warsaw Pact, or also known as the Eastern Bloc, comprising of East Germany, Poland, Czechia, and Slovakia, also known at the time as Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, and if you want to go to an extent, Albania and maybe Yugoslavia. They used these countries as a shield against any future invasions, whether it be from NATO or a re-emerging Germany or from any other European power. Reason being is because the area leading from Germany all the way up to Russia's capital, Moscow, is a part of the Great European Plain, a flat landmass that allows for any army to cross. There is little hills and mountains, but other than that, pretty much is a straight shot forward. This is the whole reason why Russia created communist governments in all these countries. And if you was to look at the expansion of NATO over time, then you would see why Russia would be even more threatened. You see, right after the fall of the Soviet Union, this is what NATO first looked like. The only country in the Eastern Bloc that joined NATO was East Germany, because Germany and East Germany reunified around that time. And as you see, this is what NATO looks like today. It encompasses all of the former Eastern Bloc countries that were under Russia's thumb. Even former territories of the Soviet Union itself, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, joined. The only ones of the Eastern Bloc that really didn't join was Ukraine, as we mentioned, Belarus, and Moldova. And even then, all three of them were part of the Soviet Union, which was a whole country of its own, despite the fact they were given, somewhat of a mini autonomy. Sorry, I can't pronounce words today, but they were given somewhat of a mini autonomy. Now, while this does not justify Russia's actions of what it's doing in the Ukraine war, it does, to a certain degree, be understandable that Russia and its national security is feeling threatened. As I said before, if you was to look at the history of Russia, Russia has constantly been invaded time after time after time. And many Russians fear a war with the West, along with many Western countries. Now, will World War III break out? I personally think no. I don't think we're to the point where we would literally be shooting guns at each other unless something very drastic happens. Now, the question many of you are asking is, what side do I pick in this conflict? Well, firstly, I think that the U.S. should not be putting soldiers in Ukraine. Well, unless if Russia attacks us first, but right now, as of the moment, I don't think we should be sending soldiers into Ukraine. I do think that we need to send aid to Ukraine, especially in places where Russia is hitting the targets hardest, such as civilian areas. I am a supporter of Ukraine, and Russian aggression should not be tolerated. However, as an American citizen myself, I also don't think that American aggression, especially in Middle Eastern countries or in any other country, should not be tolerated either. I am a firm anti-war person. I don't support a war unless we are attacked first. That's right. I am a firm opponent of the Iraq War, the war in Afghanistan, and any other war that is pointless and any war that basically destroys the U.S. economy. I mean, some people say that war is good for the economy, but I mean, looking at the last two wars and looking at what happened in 2008, yeah. I don't think there was a connection between that. But yeah. But that was my opinion on the Ukraine war. I want to hear yours. And if you're from Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, or not from those countries and have different opinions, let me know down below. I'm trying to diversify my political spectrum, so just keep that in mind. Also, the next video is going to be back on U.S. politics. So this is probably one of the videos that will be the only exception. With that being said, this is Politics with JDog6156, signing out.